let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go.
Jimmy Kimmel's emotional response, marked by tears during his monologue, stems from a deep sense of dismay and personal conviction about the implications of Donald Trump's electoral victory. As a prominent late-night host known for blending humor with pointed social commentary, Kimmel has often used his platform to express progressive views, critique political figures, and advocate for issues like healthcare and social equity. His tears likely reflect a combination of frustration, fear, and sadness over what he perceives as a setback for the values and groups he champions. The election outcome, in his eyes, represents not just a political shift, but a profound moral and societal loss, affecting a wide swath of vulnerable populations and principles he holds dear. This raw display of emotion underscores the intensity of his belief that the nation has veered onto a troubling path. Analyzing the speech itself, Kimmel employs a rhetorical strategy of cataloging grievances to emphasize the breadth of the perceived damage. He begins with a candid admission: "Let's be honest, it was a terrible night," setting a tone of blunt sincerity that primes the audience for his unfiltered perspective. The repetition of "it was a terrible night" serves as an anaphora, a deliberate stylistic choice that amplifies the cumulative weight of his concerns. He lists specific groups: women, children, immigrants, the poor, the middle class, seniors, and abstract ideals, healthcare, climate, science, journalism, justice, free speech, truth, creating a panoramic view of the stakes involved. This litany is not random. It's a calculated appeal to empathy, targeting constituencies, and causes that resonate with his largely liberal audience. By including immigrants who make this country go, he nods to economic contributions often overlooked, while references to Ukraine and NATO signal broader geopolitical anxieties. The absence of detailed policy critique keeps the focus emotional rather than technical, aligning with the late-night format's strength in visceral, relatable messaging. His tears, then, become a punctuation mark, humanizing the rhetoric and signaling genuine distress over a future he fears will unravel these priorities. Whether one agrees with his framing, the speech effectively distills a worldview shaken by the election's outcome.
But none more prominent than the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, who this morning tweeted, "Kimmel is an insufferable nonsense propaganda puppet," which, at least my children like me, you know, it's...
Elon Musk's labeling of Jimmy Kimmel as an insufferable nonsense propaganda puppet stems from ideological clashes over media credibility and political alignment. Musk, who owns X, formerly Twitter, frequently dismisses mainstream outlets as biased, framing his platform as a free speech alternative. By branding Kimmel a propaganda puppet, Musk aims to delegitimize the comedian's critiques of Donald Trump, whom Musk financially supported, dismissing Kimmel's warnings about democratic erosion as hyperbolic nonsense, and portraying him as an irritating mouthpiece, insufferable for progressive media narratives. The term propaganda reflects Musk's broader conspiratorial worldview, where established journalism like the New York Times or NPR is dismissed as partisan manipulation, a stance Kimmel mocks by sarcastically renaming AP Associated Propaganda. Kimmel's retort, "At least my children like me, you know," weaponizes humor to deflect Musk's personal attack. The jab contrasts Musk's portrayal of him as unlikable by emphasizing familial approval, subtly questioning Musk's own character. It also highlights Musk's hypocrisy. While accusing Kimmel of propaganda, Musk funded pro-Trump campaigns and owns a platform Kimmel derides as a propaganda machine. Kimmel further undermines Musk's credibility by citing Trump's past mockery of Musk. A 2017 anecdote where Trump claimed Musk begged for subsidies, exposing Musk's reliance on political favoritism despite his self-image as an independent visionary. The feud encapsulates tensions between Musk's libertarian, free speech rhetoric and Kimmel's defense of media accountability. Kimmel's decision to sarcastically title his new show "insufferable nonsense propaganda puppet" exemplifies his strategy of turning insults into satire, neutralizing criticism while spotlighting Musk's hyperbole. While the spat appears petty, it underscores high-stakes debates over truth, corporate power, and media's role in democracy. Kimmel's blend of humor and critique challenges authoritarianism, contrasting Musk's efforts to reshape narratives via platform ownership. The exchange reveals how modern discourse often prioritizes personal attacks over substance. Yet Kimmel leverages comedy to advocate for institutional integrity in an era of misinformation.
I'm sure his little hand will fit nicely in your sock hole. You know, at the White House today.
Jimmy Kimmel's quip is a layered, satirical jab blending vulgar humor, political mockery, and critique of Elon Musk's relationship with Donald Trump. The phrase, "his little hand," directly mocks Trump's famously ridiculed physical trait, his hands, a long-standing subject of public derision, symbolizing perceived inadequacy or insecurity. By pairing this with sock hole, a crude metaphor implying an orifice, Kimmel conjures a grotesque image of Trump's hand fitting into Musk's body, suggesting a subservient or sycophantic dynamic between the two. The innuendo implies Musk is willing to debase himself for Trump's favor, alluding to Musk's financial support for Trump and Trump's past mockery of Musk as a beggar for subsidies. The mention of the White House adds irony, framing Kimmel's imagined presence there as a contrast to Musk and Trump's alleged collusion. By situating himself in this hypothetical scenario, Kimmel positions himself as an outsider exposing their alliance's absurdity. The line also critiques Musk's hypocrisy. While posturing as a free speech visionary, Musk aligns with Trump, whose policies and rhetoric often contradict libertarian ideals. The crudeness of the metaphor underscores Kimmel's comedic strategy, using shock value to amplify his critique, reducing complex power dynamics to absurd, visceral imagery. Ultimately, the remark encapsulates Kimmel's role as a satirist weaponizing humor to dismantle authority. It reflects broader cultural tensions around wealth, media influence, and political corruption, framing Musk and Trump's relationship as emblematic of elite collusion. By invoking Trump's mockable traits and Musk's perceived moral compromises, Kimmel not only ridicules both figures, but also challenges audiences to question the integrity of powerful individuals shaping public discourse.
It was a night of pomposity and circumstance as Donald Trump addressed a joint session of Congress because, you know, he rarely gets to be on TV, so why not? And anytime this maniac speaks, it is a joint session. It's a joint session, it's an edible session.
Jimmy Kimmel's dissection of Donald Trump's congressional address transcends mere mockery, functioning as a layered critique of political theater, media dynamics, and societal disillusionment. By framing the event as a display of pomposity and circumstance, Kimmel targets the performative excess inherent in Trump's leadership style, where grand gestures and self-congratulatory rhetoric often overshadow substantive governance. The term pomposity not only ridicules Trump's inflated self-image, but also critiques a political culture that rewards spectacle over accountability. Circumstance, meanwhile, derides the hollow rituals of political decorum, empty traditions that Trump simultaneously exploited and undermined, turning solemn occasions into platforms for self-mythologizing. This duality reveals Kimmel's deeper argument. Trump's presidency thrived on destabilizing institutional norms, reducing governance to a reality TV narrative where conflict and hyperbole replaced policy and dialogue. Kimmel's sardonic remark about Trump's supposed scarcity of airtime, despite his relentless media dominance, exposes the paradoxical relationship between Trump and the press. By feigning sympathy for a figure who weaponized media attention to fuel his populist persona, Kimmel highlights how sensationalism and outrage became currency in a fragmented news landscape. The quip, "Why not?" drips with irony, indicting media outlets for prioritizing ratings over truth, thereby normalizing Trump's chaos as entertainment. This critique extends to the public's role as consumers. The line between civic engagement and voyeuristic consumption blurred as audiences tuned in not for policy insights, but for the train wreck allure of Trump's rhetoric. The repeated reframing of joint session into edible session epitomizes Kimmel's satirical genius. The pun, evoking cannabis edibles, serves as a multi-pronged metaphor. First, it mocks the absurdity of Trump's presidency, where formal proceedings often devolved into surreal, incoherent spectacles. Second, it critiques the public's coping mechanisms, suggesting that enduring Trump's antics required a numb detachment, as if reality itself had become too jarring to confront soberly. This metaphor resonates with a broader cultural fatigue, where political discourse felt like a disorienting trip, leaving citizens oscillating between outrage and apathy. The phrase also subtly indicts the commercialization of politics. Just as edibles commodify escapism, Trump's brand of politics commodified anger and division, reducing democracy to a product for mass consumption. Labeling Trump a maniac strips away the veneer of legitimacy, reframing him not as a flawed leader, but as an unstable force whose unpredictability endangered democratic norms. This linguistic choice is deliberate, designed to provoke reflection on the consequences of elevating such a figure to power. Kimmel's audience, largely liberal-leaning, would interpret maniac as a shorthand for Trump's documented lies, erratic decision-making, and authoritarian tendencies. Yet the term also serves as a mirror, challenging viewers to interrogate how a political system allowed such a figure to thrive. Was it mere partisanship, or a deeper institutional rot that prioritized partisan combat over collective good? Kimmel's critique extends beyond Trump to implicate the broader ecosystem that enabled his rise. The media's complicity in amplifying his antics, the GOP's capitulation to his cult of personality, and the public's desensitization to norm-shattering behavior all come under scrutiny. The edible session metaphor, in particular, encapsulates a society grappling with post-truth politics, where facts are malleable and emotional resonance trumps empirical evidence. By likening political engagement to a hallucinogenic experience, Kimmel underscores the erosion of shared reality, a phenomenon exacerbated by social media algorithms and partisan echo chambers. Ultimately, Kimmel's humor operates as both a shield and a scalpel. The absurdity of his wordplay disarms audiences, making complex critiques accessible, while the underlying gravity of his message challenges viewers to confront uncomfortable truths. His satire does not merely mock Trump's buffoonery, it interrogates the fragility of democratic institutions, the ethical bankruptcy of media sensationalism, and the societal apathy that allows authoritarianism to flourish. In framing Trump's address as a farcical edible session, Kimmel invites a reckoning. When politics becomes indistinguishable from parody, the joke is on everyone. The true punchline, he implies, is the collective failure to safeguard democracy from those who treat it as a reality show, a warning as urgent now as it was during Trump's presidency.
Trump said our momentum is back, our spirit is back, our pride is back. And not the gay kind either, the regular pride. What he's talking about, I have no idea.
Jimmy Kimmel's satirical dissection of a particular rhetorical flourish in Trump's address cuts to the heart of the former president's penchant for divisive identity politics and hollow nationalism. By zeroing in on the distinction between regular pride and its implied counterpart, Kimmel exposes the coded language often deployed to marginalize LGBTQ+ communities while inflaming a conservative base. The critique operates on multiple levels. First, it ridicules the absurdity of qualifying pride, a universal human emotion, as something that requires exclusionary categorization, revealing Trump's tendency to politicize even the most apolitical concepts. This rhetorical move, Kimmel suggests, is less about articulating a coherent vision for national unity than about stoking culture war grievances, framing LGBTQ+ inclusivity as a threat to an idealized, heteronormative version of American identity. The jab at Trump's vagueness, what he's talking about, I have no idea, underscores a broader critique of the administration's reliance on nebulous, emotionally charged slogans like "Make America Great Again" that prioritize sentiment over substance. Kimmel's mock confusion amplifies the emptiness of such rhetoric, positioning it as a smokescreen for policies that often targeted marginalized groups, from rolling back transgender rights to opposing anti-discrimination protections. The humor here is weaponized to highlight the paradox of Trump's messaging. While claiming to restore national pride, his language actively sows division by excluding those who don't conform to a narrow, exclusionary ideal. By sarcastically reducing pride to a binary, ***, the gay kind versus the regular ***. Kimmel lays bare the regressive worldview underpinning Trump's rhetoric, one that equates patriotism with conformity to traditionalist norms. This framing not only alienates LGBTQ+ individuals, but also reinforces a toxic hierarchy of belonging, where certain groups are deemed more American than others. Kimmel's commentary thus transcends mere mockery, functioning as a critique of how authoritarian leaders leverage language to redefine collective identity in ways that serve their political ends. The quip also subtly critiques the media's role in amplifying such divisive rhetoric. By feigning bewilderment, Kimmel mimics the performative confusion of pundits who treat Trump's provocations as legitimate discourse rather than deliberate distractions. Furthermore, Kimmel's emphasis on the incoherence of Trump's statement, "what he's talking about," reflects a broader cultural fatigue with post-truth politics, where emotional appeals and tribal signaling replace factual debate. The line captures the existential absurdity of a political landscape, where leaders invoke abstract ideals like pride or spirit, while dismantling the institutions and policies that foster genuine civic unity. By lampooning Trump's need to specify regular pride, Kimmel exposes the fragility of this manufactured nationalism, a pride contingent on exclusion, rooted in fear rather than collective achievement. The satire also implicitly champions inclusivity, positioning LGBTQ+ pride not as a niche concern, but as an integral thread in the fabric of national identity. In doing so, Kimmel aligns himself with a progressive vision of patriotism that embraces diversity, contrasting sharply with Trump's zero-sum rhetoric. Ultimately, the joke serves as a microcosm of Kimmel's larger comedic project, using humor to dismantle authoritarian posturing, challenge media complicity, and advocate for a more equitable society. By reducing Trump's grandiose claims to their illogical core, Kimmel invites audiences to question the sincerity and consequences of such rhetoric. The critique resonates as a warning about the dangers of conflating national pride with exclusionary politics, a reminder that true unity cannot be built on the erasure of marginalized voices. In laughing at the absurdity, viewers are compelled to confront the very real harm such narratives inflict, making Kimmel's humor both a mirror and a catalyst for resistance.
The first time Donald Trump ever tries to stop someone from talking about him on television, and it's me. Usually when he wants somebody to stop talking about him, he pays them $130,000, but he wanted me to do it for nothing.
Jimmy Kimmel's sardonic commentary on Donald Trump's alleged efforts to silence him through White House pressure distills a broader critique of power, hypocrisy, and the precarious state of free speech under authoritarian-leaning leadership. By juxtaposing Trump's attempt to leverage presidential authority to censor a comedian with his history of using financial payoffs to suppress damaging narratives, most notably the $130,000 hush money paid to Stormy Daniels, Kimmel exposes the transactional nature of Trump's relationship with truth and dissent. The comparison weaponizes irony. Trump, who famously weaponized non-disclosure agreements and legal threats to silence critics, now seeks to wield institutional power to achieve the same end, revealing a pattern of viewing public discourse as a commodity to be controlled rather than a democratic right to be protected. This duality underscores Trump's disregard for the First Amendment principles he superficially champions, positioning him as a figure who conflates personal grievance with governance, blurring the lines between political authority and petty vendetta. Kimmel's mock indignation, framing himself as the unlikely target of Trump's censorship efforts, serves to highlight the absurdity of a president fixated on retaliating against late-night satire. The jab at Trump's habitual use of financial coercion, "he wanted me to do it for nothing," not only ridicules the former president's frugality, but also underscores his expectation of unchecked compliance, as if the presidency itself entitles him to silence critics without consequence. This expectation, Kimmel implies, reflects a monarchical mindset antithetical to democratic norms, where dissent is treated as insubordination rather than a civic duty. The reference to Trump's children, the guy who fathered Eric and Don Jr., adds a layer of personal mockery, suggesting that Trump's hypersensitivity to criticism betrays a fragility unbecoming of a leader, while also lampooning his familial legacy of public ridicule. The critique extends beyond Trump to interrogate the mechanisms of power that enable such overreach. By alleging that Trump's staff pressured Disney, Abc's parent company, to rein in his monologues, Kimmel spotlights the dangerous intersection of political power and corporate media. This collusion threatens the independence of entertainment and journalism alike, positioning satire not just as comedy, but as a frontline defense against authoritarian encroachment. Kimmel's defiance, embodied in his refusal to temper his critiques, frames comedians as essential counterweights to political corruption, using humor to puncture the gravitas of power and hold leaders accountable. The anecdote about Marjorie Taylor Greene similarly calling law enforcement on him amplifies this theme, illustrating how figures aligned with Trump weaponize institutions, whether corporate or legal, to intimidate critics, thereby normalizing censorship as a tool of political retribution. Kimmel's rhetorical strategy here is twofold. He personalizes the conflict to humanize the stakes of free speech while contextualizing it within systemic threats to democracy. By invoking Trump's legal battles and reputation for litigiousness, Kimmel positions himself as part of a broader tradition of satirists targeted by thin-skinned autocrats, a lineage stretching back to figures like Lenny Bruce or George Carlin. His quip about Trump's "Make America Whine Again" hats encapsulates this critique, reducing Trump's grievance politics to a parody of itself, where victimhood becomes both a branding strategy and a mechanism of control. Ultimately, Kimmel's commentary transcends the personal feud to interrogate the erosion of democratic norms under Trump. The incident exemplifies how authoritarianism flourishes not just through overt repression, but through the gradual normalization of silencing dissent, whether via financial coercion, legal threats, or institutional pressure. Kimmel's refusal to capitulate, coupled with his public mockery of these tactics, reaffirms satire's role as a democratic safeguard. His humor acts as both a mirror, reflecting the absurdity of power, and a shield, deflecting its corrosive intent. In doing so, Kimmel underscores a vital truth. When leaders fear ridicule more than accountability, comedy becomes not just entertainment but resistance. Jimmy Kimmel's piercing satire of Donald Trump, a fusion of raw emotion, biting humor, and unyielding defense of democratic values, leaves us with a haunting question. What sticks with you most after this clash of wit and power? Was it Kimmel's tearful dismay, a mirror to a nation's fractured soul? The edible session jab turning political chaos into a surreal punchline? Or his defiance against Trump's censorship, a comedian's stand for free speech in a storm of authoritarian whims? We want to hear from you. Did Kimmel's emotional candor ignite your own frustrations, or did his razor-sharp quips, like Trump's regular pride or Musk's sock hole, cut through the noise for you? Maybe you've watched other figures twist democracy into spectacle in your own time. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We're ready to dig into this with you. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you never miss our deep dives into the stories shaping our world. Your support powers this mission to unmask truth, confront power, and amplify voices like Kimmel's. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.